And welcome to Washington and Jefferson College, Mildred Walter. We are so appreciative of your doing this for us. And I'm going to do a brief introduction. Author, activist, educator, and woman's advocate, Hood described Mildred Walter, recipient of the 1987 Coretta Scott King Award for Literature. Her award-winning book, Justin and the Best Biscuits in the World, is just one of over a dozen children's books she has written, including The Girl on the Outside and Have a Happy, a book about a boy whose December 25th birthday often gets forgotten during the holiday rush. An avid supporter of civil rights, Mrs. Walter has served as a member of the Congress of Racial Equality and worked with the American Civil Liberties Union and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to initiate legislation. At the time of her Coretta Scott King Award, Mrs. Walter was walking for peace from Leningrad to Moscow, along with 200 American and 200 Soviet citizens. Mildred Walter also won in 1993 the prestigious Christopher Award for her nonfiction work, Mississippi Challenge. Now 91 years young, Mrs. Walter continues to write and work in behalf of civil rights. And so we welcome you. Thank you for doing this. And if you would like to make a statement, I'm going to go to a chair here.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. And I am delighted to have the opportunity to speak to students and to teachers who are interested in making change in our nation. As your instructor has told you, Richard, I have been involved trying to make change in this country, seeing that racism, which was started as early as 1640 and spread around the triangle for slavery, those nations that were trying very hard to bring about that kind of exploitation of people of color. So today I would like to talk to you about something that is really on my heart now and on my mind, and that is healing the nation with reconciliation. I was born in a small town in Louisiana back in 1922 and never had the opportunity to go into a library until I entered college at the age of 17. And when I saw all those books, it was really something that was in a way awful. I had never imagined that there were that many books written in the world, because we were never allowed into a library. And even after I was doing graduate work at USC in Los Angeles, an English teacher told me, "Don't worry, you will never be able to speak or write the King's English." So when I was asked to write books, I thought, oh no, I cannot. I don't know any writers. I don't, although I was reading a lot of books, I didn't feel that I could write. But I wanted very much to write for our children who had very few books back in the 60s, very few. Maybe A Snowy Day showed African American children as human and as capable of doing things. So today we will, I hope, get into a discussion on how, even though things have changed and there are a lot of African Americans who are doing great things, including President of the United States, we still, I feel, have too many people in poverty. We still have too many youth, African American youth, who have maybe unemployment rate of 90%. And there are other things, of course, the brutality of the police that I am sure we will be able to talk about, I hope, and to, with reconciliation, possibly find a way to bring harmony between the races and in the racism that seems to be perpetuated in a way that it will never end.
So my question was, because of your lifelong witness to racial trouble, do you remember any event that was traumatizing to you or happened to someone you knew or even yourself?
I can remember when I was a freshman in college, I came home for the Christmas holidays, and I was walking downtown past the drugstore where soldiers, white soldiers, came to buy sodas and to congregate. And as I was walking by, one of them called to his friends inside, "Come see this pretty nigger." And they came out and surrounded me. And of course, what could I do? I couldn't do anything, so I waited until they let me go. And that, to me, was a traumatic experience.
Yes, I agree.
So my brother was arrested once for being accused of stealing a ring, which he had not done. And then when the person found her ring, he was released from jail. So those are the kinds of things that happen to us. And having been arrested by the police when I was on my way to a meeting of the ACLU. I was going on the west side of LA to an ACLU meeting, and the police, I had parked my car and was walking to the meeting, and they stopped me and wanted to know what was I doing in that area. They thought I was a prostitute. So those are the kinds of things that have happened to me that I'm sure has happened to many African American women.
And my question is, what actions in the past have led to the most progress in civil rights and have helped the country in taking steps towards equality?
Well, I guess since the beginning of slavery in this nation, there have been actions promulgated, put forth to try to gain equality and freedom in this nation. We have had revolts, we have had various activities, but a lot of people think that action during the 60s was the action that really brought about some change that not only affected this nation, but the people all over the planet. The civil rights movement, where we waged the nonviolent action, did a lot. The voting rights, the people who waged the ability to vote in Mississippi, and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party that protested at the 1964 Democratic Convention was very much, I think, an important action that led to the Voting Rights Act. And of course, the Kerner Report was also an action that tried to bring about some change, but that failed.
Do you have any specific ideas about how to get unwilling people to admit that there was a serious wrong done against the African American people in order that we can move forward to reconcile?
Well, that is a very hard question because people who are privileged, as many are in this nation, it's very hard for them to give up their privilege because many of them think that if they allow African Americans or other people of color to have freedom or access to economic freedom or economic opportunities, they will lose their opportunities. I can, and it's very hard to break that kind of attitude. When Wallace was running for president and was being a national political office, political person, he mentioned how hard it was to get poor whites to work with African Americans to break down prejudice and to get people, all people, better opportunities. So I guess what one could do is to ask young people like you to begin to admit that capitalism as it is in progress and racism as it exists in this nation must be looked at seriously. It must be discussed, it must be analyzed, and some activities must be brought forth to bring about change in the nation. It is very difficult, it will be very difficult when people have been indoctrinated as being privileged because of the color of their skin.
Wouldn't we all, blacks and whites, just be better to leave the past behind and stop adding fuel to the fire by discussing reconciliation? Why can't we stop living in the past?
Well, is it possible to forget the past and not know where you're going in the future? It is our past that help us to make the present possible so that the future will be, make the present so that we can do things to better ourselves and to form a good future. It would be good if we could forget the past of this nation, but we are not allowed to do that because what happened at the formation of this nation is still very much the reason why, or the basis of what is happening today and what will happen possibly tomorrow. It would be so good if we could remember the past that was very progressive, you see. Sometimes what you are saying is this past has been so bad that we need to forget it. What if it had been where we were all human beings working together to make this a nation that would have no poverty, good health, and good education for everybody? Wouldn't that be a good path to them? But we cannot forget the past. It's part of our nature because it's part of the human quality to move from the past to the present to the future. I wish that we could forget this particular past of this nation, and I wish that we would use it to the past to make a better world for all people. When you think about what we do as a people, the wars that we have created, the exploitation that we have done against people of color, it would be good to look at this and say we are going to change, we are going to make a difference so that our past will be more pleasant. We cannot forget it without working at it and making it something that is forgiven and willing to change. Then maybe we can move on knowing that we have done the best we could to rectify all of the things that we have done in the past that have not built harmony and human kindness for all people concerned.
What are your thoughts about the events that happened in Ferguson, Missouri?
Oh, well, Ferguson, of course, is not new. The events in Ferguson have happened in many places, and the events in Ferguson have been going on for a long time. So what I feel is that I hope that out of this, that the people in Ferguson can begin to have a new way to solve their problems with the powers that be, with the police, and with the elected officials. I am hopeful that if there are demonstrations, that there will not be a few people who will cause the police to react with militaristic kinds of behavior. But Ferguson is like many places in this nation. And it is unfortunate, but we are hopeful that the people will continue to act, even if it's not in the streets, but they will act to bring about change in that area. And we can bring about change with the police in most places.
What are your thoughts about the causes of inner city violence, blacks against whites, whites against blacks, and especially blacks against blacks?
My thought about that is that the nation is ill, is suffering. The nation is suffering from dis-ease because of the overriding problems that are caused by systemic, institutionalized racism. Young black people are isolated, separated in areas where education is not very much meaning for them. When we came into this nation, we lost our language, our names, our religion, our family structure, all of that. And the schools do not recognize that our children have a culture that is different. Many of our children come to school with lots of curiosity. Their ability to jump, hop, and skip is already formed, even at kindergarten. And they do very well with an IQ, the first test that they take. But after the third grade, their IQs go down. Education is one thing that makes the violence. Lack of economic opportunity makes the violence. Segregation and separation. Now, we know that violence happens between people, all people. And of course, blacks are segregated in an area where they have little opportunity. They are, a lot of times, many of them have been put in prison. Youth have been put in prison, come out, they cannot live, and they're felons. They cannot live in homes where their parents are because so many of them live in public housing. So there is anger there. And who will they strike out against except each other? Now the attitude of blacks, whites against blacks, of course, the police will, if a young black teenager gets into trouble, the parent is called. I have had children who were with white children who were arrested, or who were stopped by the police, and they all were taken in. The white children's parents were called, but not the black children. They were kept and questioned and sometimes arrested, put in jail. So what you are asking is how can we end this kind of violence against each other in this nation? That's a very serious question. It is very hard when people are segregated and the fear of each other is so great that, and especially the fear of young black men, the fear of them is so great that it makes them angry and resentful for having done nothing to most of the time, and then to make people react to them the way they do. So until we can look at the violence in games and in sports, even in football and all of these things, you know, it will be very hard to keep people from being so aggressive. And until we can have a kind of moral duty to respect the rights of people and to give people an opportunity to grow and to become the potential that they might have, then I'm afraid we will not end the violence in this nation. Blacks against blacks, blacks against whites, and even whites against whites.
What do you think is the answer to inner city violence? Is it education, increased police presence, or something else that the local, state, or federal governments can do?
Well, I think it is the violence, as I have explained with his question. The police seem to be conditioned to use force and to keep law and order. And the law and order and the war against drugs and the war against, we are warring people. We war against everything. And the war against drugs has created a lot of problems in our community because the federal government created a lot of the problems that we face with police brutality in our communities. Well, the government could do some things about this. They could change the laws about incarceration and not make all of these young people felons who can get no work and can't live in public housing. And so that is one thing they could do. I'm not sure if, well, and of course education. We need to look at the possibility of trying to understand how to educate African American children. I have written and taught, well, back in the 70s, I was talking to the Education Committee of the United States Senate, and I was trying to get them to see that African American children bring things to the school that are not appreciated. They come with a language that they use, and teachers will question that. What did you say? What is that? And the child feels very much less than appreciated. Integration of schools was a farce. because our culture was not considered at all. We were forced out of areas into the white children didn't come into our areas, into our schools. We were forced to take buses out of our area into white schools. And the schools today are still segregated. And that is one of the problems. And the teachers really do not understand African American children. They don't. And until we can get some kind of materials out that show how cultures are different and how people have, all people have a culture. And culture does not mean that you go to opera and all of that. It means you have a family structure, you have a language, and you have religion, beliefs. And those kinds of things of African Americans was never understood in this nation. And therefore the educational system find our children really not ready to learn. They claim that. They claim that our children cannot learn because they do not know our children. So education, attitudes about the police, economics, opportunities, all of those things will help to end violence.
What is your opinion on capitalism? In essence, do you think that the free market promotes freedom for everyone, or do you think that it favors white people over people of color?
Well, of course, you know that capitalism started out of the slave triangle kind of slavery, because the exploitation, they saw that the exploitation of labor and the exploitation especially of people of color, and the building of the European nations by going into Africa and India and all of those places could build quite a fortune for them. And to ensure that this continued, they set up a model of government that would bring profits from this kind of exploitation. And so it evolved into what they call the free markets and individualism and those kinds of attitudes. Now, as opposed to that, there was a system that believed that people should control their way of making a living. It would be more humane and less concerned with few people owning all of the materials and others not having very much. I really think that the free market system and a few people owning all of the wealth is not the best model for society to become humane, and for people to come together to not have so much poverty and ill health and socialistic, and where socialism is in practice. People have health care, they have education, they work, own the market, they own the businesses, the people own those things. But here in this nation and in England and some European countries, that is not so. The people own nothing, and they work, and the work that they do is very much underpaid, but most of the people seem to side with that kind of with the people who own everything, hopeful that one day they will own it too. So I don't see this country changing its mode of its model of economic developments. Of course, we have had some. We have a socialist person in our Senate now, and there have been socialist governments in Minnesota and places, but by and large, the people believe that it's all right for some people to own all of the economic wealth, and hoping that one day they too will get the American dream and own, get as much as they possibly, if they work hard enough, they too can become very wealthy. So capitalism is, I think, it looks as though the way we are going, corporations will be in control in this nation, because corporations now are people. And that means that capitalism is the model that is best for this nation.
Do you feel that the progress brought by the Kerner report was negated during the political tactics used for the re-election of Obama?
The Kerner report?
Yes.
Well, the Kerner report happened in I think it was 68. It will be 50 years that happened in 2018. The Obama election, I don't think could have come out of that report. That report gave really brought very little change in attitudes and in government approach. I think Obama's election might have come out of some of the action that was taken in the civil rights movement, of seeking change, and possibly with young people. I feel that young people really influence that 2008 election. They talk to their parents. I've worked with some of them who came from places into Colorado to work for Obama. And I do believe that with that kind of approach, people were willing and hopeful. Obama really stirred people with his "yes, we can," and with hope, and those kinds of verbal verbal statements that made people think that there is a possibility that we can come together and do some good things for this nation. Not the Kerner report, but young people who's are beginning to sense that the nation needs to come together, I think. I wish Obama had recognized the efforts of all of those young people who worked for him and made a place in his cabinet for youth. I think now there is a need for youth to have a voice in the government. They are, most of the people in power now are millionaires, and most of the youth are in debt. And many of the youth are in debt who have really abilities to make suggestions and do actions in this nation. And but that is why I feel that Obama was able to be elected. And of course, we know now that the powers that be were not very happy with that, and they have made it a little bit hard for him to do much. And how they claimed he was not even a citizen and should not be president because he was born in Kenya. But even if he had been born in Kenya in 1648, in this country, they changed the law where children's heritage was that of the father. That was the English law, and they changed it here to make the heritage of the child the mother. So every child born in this country to a mother who was a citizen is a citizen. And that was for slave owners to have those children who were born to slave women become citizens, and they could have them as property. So I don't think people understood that when they were claiming Obama should not have been president because he was born in Kenya. His mother was a citizen of this nation, therefore he is a citizen and could be president of the United States. But not the Kerner report, but people like you, young people like you, worked hard for Obama and changed attitudes and got him elected. That's what I think.
What is your opinion on President Obama's presidency and its effect on racial division?
I think that President Obama has done what he feels is best to not appear as president of African American people, but of all the people. I feel that he did health care, which would be very beneficial for people, and especially people of color who have not been able to get health care. no matter what he does, I feel now would not be what he doesn't do. Also is highly critical. A lot of people feel that he has not stressed much about racism, and I feel that if he had done that, he would have been called the angry black male. He has pointed out, I feel, that he has suffered from racial discrimination, and he has started an activity for young black men called My Brother's Keeper that might be helpful to get some economic opportunities for young black men and to get them scholarships and into universities through business, people who have money, businessmen in the community. But I am not sure that President Obama could, without being forced and led to do things that would bring about change in relationship to racism and integration and education in this nation. I don't think he could have done that. I can remember when President Roosevelt, I voted for President Roosevelt. I can remember when he was president, African Americans went to him and asked him to do things and said, if you don't do it, we're gonna march on Washington. And he said, don't march, make me do it. And they made him do it. And he did an FEPC, Fair Employment Practices law that allowed blacks to be hired in federal, all places where federal money was being put into, especially in the war industries. So people have to act to make their president do things. And this is not what's happening in this nation today. The people are not organized. They're not organized because they don't have any leaders. At one time, labor union leaders led the people and with action to get the president to do things. Now, there are no labor unions that are active. Congress, the federal government has done away with most labor unions, starting with Reagan when he fired the unions of the airports. So the president is not going to do much. No president is going to do much unless it is favorable to big business and until the people act and realize that they have to do things. And that is not what has happened with Obama and black people.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Yes.
How do you think, personally and overall, the black community feels that 93% of them voted for Obama in 2012, and under Obama, black unemployment has raised 3%, and 90% of black minors are now unemployed, and that is an all-time high?
I think that we must know that in this country, always, whatever the unemployment rate is, blacks are twice that. If it's 6%, blacks are unemployed 12%. It's always been that way. And President Obama came into office when unemployment was much higher than it is now. It's down now to about 6%, I guess, 7%, and African Americans up to about 15%. That's normal in this nation for black people. African Americans voted for President Obama because they felt a kind of pride, knowing, I think many of us knew he would not be able to do much because of the attitude of people in this nation about black people. But we voted for him with pride and with hope. I can remember one black legislator saying about Obama, she was very much for Hillary Clinton. She said, "We don't need hope, we need jobs." And of course, other people felt, and a lot of, not just black people, white people voted for Obama because they were hopeful that change could come to this nation. But the unemployment rate for blacks, no matter who is president, we are always the last hired and the first fired. And it is claimed that if we have a lot of ability, we're too smart for a job, for that job. And if we don't have the ability, we're not smart enough for that job. So unemployment for us has been a factor because of racism. And it will not end until racism, there has been some kind of reconciliation in this nation where people can ask for forgiveness, and it's to change, and people can forgive and become whole. It won't happen. We are a nation that is very much divided, and we will remain divided until racism can be reconciled. But that's a good question about Obama. I hope I answered it for you in a way that lets you know. I was truly surprised when he won the election, even though I had worked for him and had voted for him. I didn't think ever during my lifetime that I would see a black man as president of the United States. And I wish that he could have brought the nation together so that it would not be so terribly divided as it is between Democrats and Republicans now. But I don't know. He came in, his second term was, his first term, he came in with a lot of problems that he didn't solve well. I was so surprised with the cabinet that he chose. But that was what he thought was best. And it didn't work out very well for those people who were unemployed. The banks were saved. And of course he saved the automobile factory that kept things going. in areas. So he did the best he could with what he had to work with, I think.
You know, I can feel it in the room. Everybody would like to discuss, you know, and we only have you here on Skype. So the discussion is left to all these young people. Do you want to make a final statement to them?
Well, I guess I was very fortunate to meet Richard in LA and talk to him about what is on my heart now, what is on my mind and on my heart. As you know, he told you I'm 90, not 91, but 92.
Oh, well. 92.
I'm 92 years old, and I am beginning to feel that maybe I should turn it over to young people and let them do, make all of the fuss and all of the actions that need to be taken. But I do feel that the time has come for the nation to have a serious discussion on racism, systemic, institutionalized racism in this nation. That has never been done. And as some people will say, why can't we forget the past? Why can't we forget racism and move on? I don't think that will happen until we have really settled this with coming together and talking about it. And people who were so, who gained a lot of their wealth even today out of inheritance of people who were involved in the slave trade. It hasn't been so long ago, but it has been long enough for many of us to feel that we are not responsible. And we did not have slaves. We did not. We are not racist. But in this nation, we all are involved in the problem of racism. And until we have some reconciliation, I do believe that we will not become whole. White people will not be whole. Black people will not be whole. There must be a discussion of this, and where people can say, we are willing to change. And black people can become whole by saying, I am willing also to work with you, forgive, and let us move on in harmony together. I think that could happen if we put our minds to it. Maybe not, but I think it can happen. I don't know if it'll happen during my lifetime, but I think it could during your lifetime. And you would be better for it. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
Mildred.
much. You're an iconic role model of sticking to your beliefs and your guns lifelong, and I hope all their lives, the 20-somethings in here, will remember that, and how your ideas have evolved and changed, and how at your age, your youth, you are so articulate, and we thank you.
Well, thank you.